Italy, late 1944. A German Tiger crew is prowling the countryside. They are the apex predators of the battlefield. They know that most British tanks can't hurt them from the front. They feel invincible. But watching them is something strange. It looks like a Valentine tank, a relic from the early war, but the gun is wrong. It's massive, and it's pointing backwards. The British commander drops his hand. The massive 17-pounder fires. The muzzle flash is blinding. The Tiger is hit. Smoke pours from the German armor. But before the German turret can even traverse to return fire, the British vehicle doesn't reverse. It drives forward. In seconds, the assassin is gone, vanished around a corner before the smoke even clears. The Germans are left burning, wondering how a tank driving the wrong way just ended their war. This is the story of the Archer, a vehicle born of desperation, built on a chassis that was too small, carrying a gun that was too big, and mounted the wrong way round. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it became one of the deadliest snipers of World War II. To understand the Archer, we first have to understand the panic of 1942. The British Army was in a crisis of firepower. For the first half of the war, British doctrine had relied on the 2-pounder and 6-pounder guns. Against Italian light tanks, they were fine. Against the early Panzers, they were adequate. But then came the Cats, the Tiger, the Panther. Suddenly, Allied crews watched their rounds bounce harmlessly off German frontal armor, while the German 88mm guns tore them apart from 2 kilometers away. The British needed a can opener. The solution was the Ordnance QF 17-pounder, a 76.2mm beast of a gun. It was, without a doubt, the best Allied anti-tank gun of the war. It could punch through a Tiger's frontal armor at 1,000 yards, but it had a massive problem. It was enormous. The barrel alone was over 4 meters long. The breech was heavy and required a long recoil path. As a towed anti-tank gun, it was excellent, but heavy to move. To win the war, this gun needed to be mobile. It needed to be on a tank. And that is where the nightmare began for British engineers. They tried mounting it on the Crusader. The turret was too small. They tried mounting it on the Cromwell. The turret ring couldn't take the torque. They eventually managed to shoehorn it into the Sherman to create the Firefly and the Challenger, but those took time. Time the British didn't have. They needed a stopgap. They needed a chassis that was already in production, reliable, and available in large numbers. They looked at the Valentine. It was an infantry tank. Slow, low to the ground, and by 1943, obsolete as a gun tank. But the British had hundreds of them. The task fell to Ordnance Vickers Armstrong and their designer, Leslie Little. The request was simple: put the massive 17-pounder on the tiny Valentine chassis. The physics, however, were impossible. If you mounted the gun facing forward, the barrel would overhang the front of the tank by several feet. The vehicle would be nose-heavy, destroying the suspension. Worse, the driver's hatch on the Valentine was at the front. With the gun breaching right behind him, the driver would be trapped. Most designers would have given up. Leslie Little did something radical. He asked, why does the gun have to face the front? By mounting the gun facing the rear over the engine deck, the physics suddenly worked. The long barrel extended over the rear of the tank, keeping the overall length manageable. The heavy breech sat in the middle of the fighting compartment, balancing the weight perfectly over the tracks. It was called the Self-Propelled 17 PDR Valentine Mark I, but the troops would soon know it simply as the Archer. It looked odd. It looked wrong, but as tests began in 1943, the War Office realized that this backward tank was actually a stroke of accidental genius. Let's look closer at this machine. The first thing you notice is the size. The Archer is incredibly low, only 2.24 meters or 7 feet 4 inches tall. In the hedgerows of Normandy or the olive groves of Italy, this thing was invisible. But for the crew, invisible didn't mean comfortable. The Archer was an open-topped vehicle. This saved weight and allowed fumes from the massive gun to escape, but it left the crew exposed to shrapnel, grenades, and the elements. The crew of 4 sat in a cramped, armored box. The driver was in the standard Valentine position at the front, which, remember, is now the rear of the gun. Picture this. You are the driver. When the gun fires, the massive breech recoils backwards, stopping just inches from your head. They carried 39 rounds of ammunition, a mix of high explosive and armor-piercing discarding sabot, or APDS. That APDS round is key. It flew at over 1,200 meters per second. It didn't just penetrate German armor, it shattered it. However, the transverse was limited. Because it wasn't a turret but a fixed casemate structure, the gun could only move 11 degrees to the left or right. This meant the driver had to roughly aim the entire vehicle before the gunner could take over. So you have a tank that drives one way and shoots the other. How do you fight with it? You don't use it like a tank. You use it like a sniper. The accidental backward gun turned out to be the Archer's superpower. In a standard anti-tank destroyer, like the American M10, you drive into a firing position. You fire. Now you have revealed your location. To escape, you have to reverse. Reversing a tank is slow, and the driver often can't see where he's going. The Archer flipped the script. The crew would reverse into an ambush position. They would wait. When a target appeared, bang. Before the enemy could spot the muzzle flash, the driver simply engaged first gear and drove forward at full speed. It was the ultimate shoot-and-scoot vehicle. German commanders wrote reports expressing confusion. They would see a flash, fire at the location, but find nothing. The Archer was already 200 yards away, setting up the next kill. Deploying in October 1944, the Archer saw service in northwest Europe and Italy. It was particularly effective in Italy. The mountainous, narrow roads forced German armor into choke points, perfect killing zones for a low-profile ambush predator. One unit reported that the Archer was superior to any other anti-tank weapon in concealment. While the Sherman Firefly got the glory for being a proper tank, the Archer was often doing the dirty work in the woods, quietly dismantling the Panzerwaffe one shot at a time. When the war ended in 1945, most stopgap vehicles were scrapped. The Archer, however, stuck around. It was robust, reliable, and that 17-pounder gun was still lethal. In the 1950s, 200 Archers were sold to the Egyptian army. This leads to one of history's ironies. The Archer, built to fight Nazis, saw its final major combat in the sands of the Sinai during the Suez Crisis of 1956. Facing off against Israeli forces, who were ironically using upgraded Sherman tanks, the Egyptian Archers had mixed results. While the gun was still capable of destroying any Israeli vehicle, the mobile warfare of the desert didn't suit the static ambush tactics the Archer was designed for. Many were captured. Today, if you want to see a surviving Archer, one of the best examples is actually in the Yad Lashirion Museum in Latrone, Israel, a British tank used by Egyptians, captured by Israelis. The Archer was never meant to be a permanent solution. It was an ugly duckling, cobbled together from spare parts and a surplus of chassis to solve an emergency. It was cramped, cold, and weird. But it proves a vital lesson in military engineering. It's not always about having the most advanced technology, it's about how you use it. The Archer turned a design flaw into a tactical masterpiece. It was the tank destroyer that looked backward but moved British armor doctrine forward. What do you think? Would you rather be in a Sherman Firefly or the low-profile Archer? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the weapons of history.
Smash that like button and subscribe for more secrets like this. See you next time.